Call this meeting to order. First thing we need is a motion to approve the minutes of the prior committee meeting. Motion by Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Sokol. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Paul.
Okay, first on the agenda is Justin Gagnon with the railroad for review.
I'm actually going to turn this over to Mr. Ed Ellis, the president of IowaPacific.
Thank you. My name is Ed Ellis. I'm president of IowaPacific, and I'm also president of the Saratoga North Creek Railway. And since some of you are new to the committee and even to the board, I'd just like to take a couple minutes to acquaint you with our company and what we do for Warren County. IowaPacific is the premier private operator of passenger trains in the United States. While we don't carry the most passengers, those we carry travel with better amenities than any other operator. We have a fleet of 11 full-length dome cars, of which 2 are presently here on the Saratoga and North Creek. We operate more dining services than any other private operator, including the dining services that we run at SNC, and we're the largest operator of Polar Express under franchise to Warner Brothers. Last year we carried over 300,000 people worldwide, nearly a third of the total Polar Express passengers, including the services that we provided on SNC. Our operations are at the highest level of safety. Saratoga North Creek is fully qualified as a passenger carrier under the Code of Federal Regulations 49 CFR 238, which is the same set of regulations that apply to the Long Island Railroad and Metro North. So we operate over Canadian Pacific's main line to get into the Saratoga Springs train station, and we have done so incident-free for the past 5 years. Our safety record is exemplary. Our management and operating team is local to the area. Justin Gagnon is in charge, as you know, of SNC, and he grew up in Warren County, and we're proud of the fact that we employ almost entirely Warren County residents. So we have provided rail services to Warren County on this line and also to the town of Corinth. Dick Lucia is here representing the town of Corinth for the past 5 years without any public subsidy. I know there's a lot of discussion. I read in the newspaper that the railroad was paid. We were not paid. It actually went the other way. We, under the contract, pay 6% of our revenue to Warren County. So those of you who are new and think that somehow the county subsidizes the railroad, it's the other way around. We subsidize the county. So during that time, we provided substantial economic benefits. We paid over $6 million in wages in Warren County, and we also purchased $13 million in goods and services in Warren County. So our the total economic benefit that we provided in Warren and Saratoga counties was over $150 million in the past 5 years at no cost to the county. Try that with your highways. So these benefits included the economic value of tourist visits to North Creek and the other towns along the line, and that's a key benefit in this area, the visits to the small towns in Warren County and in Saratoga County. All of these benefits occurred with no subsidy from the county. So the operation ran well, and we handled somewhere between 4 and 5 times the number of riders that the previous operator handled. But we think there's still room for improvements. There are 5 key improvements that we plan to work on during the next 5 years. First, we think North Creek and other towns, Hadley, Thurman, Corinth, can be more attractive destinations to travelers, and we're going to work on that with the people in both counties. Second, we need to be better aligned with Saratoga County because to bring tourists to Saratoga Springs, from Saratoga Springs onto the railroad, because Saratoga is pretty much oriented to Saratoga, and we have not really cracked the nut there to get people in Saratoga County to work with us to get people on the train. We can work on that. Third, we are engaged in a study that could lead to a single-seat train ride between Albany, Rensselaer, and Warren County. This is a study that was approved last year and is underway right now, enabling people to go from the Albany area to the towns along Saratoga, North Creek, and vice versa. Fourth, we will add services designed to attract additional riders. I'll talk about that in a second. And fifth, we expect to complete freight deals, including a contract to move stone that will contribute to the long-term sustainability of the entire line. So I want to talk about two of these items. First, I referred to additional services. One of those is the Pullman table, our new dinner train operation. Pullman is one of the most recognizable brands in American railroading. In fact, it was the first nationwide brand in America. And actually, there's a local component to this because George Pullman, who started the Pullman Company, was actually born and raised in New York. He was a New York native who ended up in Chicago. And Pullman became the largest operator of hotel cars, sleeping cars, and dining cars in the United States. In fact, in the 1920s, there were over 100,000 beds every night crisscrossing this country. It was, at that point, Hilton only had 3 hotels. So it was, in fact, people were so enamored with the Pullman Company, they called the sleeping car porters George after George Pullman. But it wasn't George Pullman who made it that big. He started it, and he nourished it, but it was the second president of Pullman who bought up all the competition, brought in technological change like steel cars, and the second president of Pullman also ended up not too far from here. The second president of Pullman was Robert Todd Lincoln, the son of President Lincoln, who his home in Manchester, Vermont is open. There's a Pullman car there. And we really like this part of what we do because of the fact that it's real American history. And one of the pieces of American history that I particularly like in this is that Robert Todd Lincoln almost didn't become president of the Pullman Company because in 1864, when he was going to Harvard, he was on his way home to Washington. He was on a train platform in Newark, New Jersey, and somebody bumped him, and he fell in front of the train. And a hand reached down and grabbed him by the collar and yanked him to safety. And the man who saved the life of President Lincoln's son was Edwin Booth, the brother of John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's assassin. You can look that up. It's true. And this is not the Disney version of America. This is what really happened. And so having the Pullman table, having a dinner train that calls into this area the first-class service that Pullman provided is really important to us. It's got the upscale market in mind, which is the Saratoga market. We expect to roll it out this spring and summer to entice people in Saratoga and the North Country to stay one more day, because that's where the economic benefit really comes from. I also mentioned that we're involved in a study that could result in direct service between North Creek, Saratoga, and Albany. While commuters could use the service, it is really more designed for leisure and discretionary travelers coming from the New York City metro area to make it easier for them to get to this great vacation area. Right now, rail freight traffic on those lines between Saratoga Springs and south is down. And it's going to stay down for a while. The railroads are not moving nearly as much coal or energy in general, and some of the changes in the ownership of those lines is resulting in a reduction in freight traffic. So there is an opportunity, there is capacity on the line that could enable us to go from North Creek to Saratoga to Albany. And Iowa Pacific is uniquely qualified to do that. We already operate a mainline passenger service for the state of Indiana between Chicago and Indianapolis. We provide and maintain the rolling stock, and we provide the onboard service. So services provided by companies like Iowa Pacific provide a great comparison to those provided by Amtrak and commuter agencies. It is absolutely the right thing to have competitive services such as ours instead of a monolithic service with no creativity, no innovation, no variety. Those of you who have ridden our train know that we provide an excellent service to the traveling public. And that's why the UK privatized their rail services to get away from the homogenization, the dumbing down of rail service into a single, unified, mindless morass of mediocrity. Iowa Pacific's rail service is different, it's engaging, exciting, and attractive, and Warren County is at the forefront of innovation because we're here. So we're grateful to be partners with you, and I hope you've enjoyed being partners with us. Our renewal of the operating agreement over the next 5 years is an indication that we strongly believe in the long-term future of rail service in this area. We believe the investment made by Warren County and the town of Corinth and this line was a wise investment. In fact, we have indicated to the county and the town that we would be interested in purchasing the rail line if a decision is ever made to divest, just as we purchased and reactivated the line to Tahaz. This rail line is an investment in the next generation of residents, tourists, and workers living in or traveling to Warren County. Fewer young people are applying for driver's licenses than at any time in history. They want services such as we provide when they come from the city to the North Country. We're proud of the relationship we have with Warren and Corinth and of the economic development this rail line generates without any public subsidy. I think the abandonment of any additional rail lines in this day and age is a mistake, and for example, the proposed abandonment of part of the Lake Placid line would be a colossal mistake, robbing future generations of the only rail access to Lake Placid, which is why we offered to purchase that line as well. I'm thrilled that the leaders of Warren County and Corinth recognize that the massive current economic benefits and the present and future mobility needs outweigh the desires of the elite, exclusive cult of bicycle and snowmobile enthusiasts who want to limit access to the phenomenal views available from the train to only those willing to buy and operate the machinery that it takes to be in the bicycle or snowmobile thing at an exceptionally expensive cost of maintenance to the public, while we're providing a subsidy-free rail line open to all. So I can only hope that those of you who are new to the committee will continue the great work begun by those who came before you for the benefit of those who now live in or visit Warren County and those who next will come. Thank you for letting me talk to you for a few minutes, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Dixon?
Ed, first I'd like to say that I'm an ardent supporter of the trains. I've done a lot of train travel.
Thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. I have a couple minor questions. You must have tremendous foresight when you gave up your ski train this year, considering...
Justin makes the weather here.
Well,
Talk to him.
We need to speak to him. I'm curious, are you going to bring it back next year? What was the reason for doing it?
Yeah, that's, you know, I love ski train, and I've ridden it every year. And we did several focus groups and market research, and what we figured out was it really takes a single seat ride from Albany to fill the train. Because when people get in their cars, what they told us, if I get in my car, I'm not driving to Saratoga, I'm driving to North Creek. If I could get on the train in Albany, different story. Then I've got the whole thing handled. But driving to Saratoga and then going to North, what we were getting was people who came to Saratoga and were spending the weekend and said, let's take an excursion. They really, I think probably only maybe 10% of the people who rode the ski train actually went and skied. We have more people in the summertime who ride the lifts than we do in the winter, because they keep the lifts open in the summer and we take people over to Gore Mountain to go up. We get more people riding the lifts in the summer. So to make it more convenient for the people who actually want to use it, it would need to come out of Albany. And if you go back and look at the historic ski trains that the D&H ran, that's where they came from.
So
some of them even came from New York City.
So are you talking about having ski trains running from Albany next year?
That's what it really takes. I'm not saying that we won't do it next winter if we aren't in Albany, although hopefully the study is going to be done in the next few months and we think that there's an opportunity to act. But in order for it to be really successful, you need to have a single seat ride from Albany.
Well, again, I'm really enthusiastic about the railroad and the great job you guys have done.
Thank you.
I think it is a real asset to Warren, Saratoga County, and the counties north. And
thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, Supervisor Bramer?
Chairman, how many dining cars did you run last year? Trains, sorry.
How many dining trains did we run last year? Last year we only ran a handful, Justin, 14. It was our first year to try that out, and they all sold out. And so over the fall we looked at it in the context of our broader business across the country, and we were rolling out Pullman table in other locations and concluded that Saratoga and North Creek was a great location for that, partly because we had the experimental service last summer, which went really well. So we are expecting to ultimately get to over 100 trains a year for dining.
Was that for 2016? I know
We're-
that there was some talk.
We're gonna roll it out when we're ready. One of the things that you can count on us is to do it right. So when the cars are ready, and the chef is ready, and the food is ready, we'll roll it out. We'd like to roll it out in the spring, but we have a lot of work to do before that, so it may slip into the summer, but when it's ready to go, we'll be going. It is gonna be 2016, yes. Dick?
Go ahead. By the way, this is Supervisor Lucia from, Corinth, Town of Corinth.
Okay, and I just wanna say, I wanna thank Ed and the railroad folks for, bringing all this forward, I feel we've worked long and hard to get up on this. I'm old enough to have been started from the beginning of all this, and we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into getting this. We're just at the point now, we're getting our station set up, to have our station. Now I'd hate to see it all end at our station. We have a rail spur that goes from there to the IP company, which now they've changed their, way that they're selling it. They've subdivided, and all the land that's in the village now that can be sold. Before it was tied to a bond, it had the landfills, and nobody wanted to pay the bond to build that thing. Now it's subdivided, we have a lot of interested folks. I'd sure hate to have anything tear it apart.
I appreciate you saying that. Iowa Pacific has been in the business of turning around railroads for 15 years. We bought our first railroad in 2002, 2001, and it's not easy to turn railroads around. The fastest we did it to everybody's satisfaction was maybe 7 years, and some of them have taken 14, 15 years, and we're just now getting there. But we're patient guys, and we have a lot of smart people that work with us, and our smart people work well in public-private partnerships with towns and counties so that we accomplish things together that we would never be able to accomplish by ourselves. And so, we're in this for the long haul. That's why we asked to renew the contract. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that. I sent Paul an email on June 22nd asking to renew the contract, and it's been our intent ever since then to do that. We had some good meetings and discussions about it, and so I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Hopefully it'll happen.
Supervisor Bramer.
I'm sorry, I know, I might have missed this in the beginning, you paid to the county 6% of the gross revenue. What was the gross revenue this year?
I don't have that number, but I'll get that for you. I think overall for the 5 years, we're probably getting close to having paid the county $1 million.
Is there anything else from, the committee? Would, somebody like to move, the resolution to, renew the Saratoga North Creek Railroad?
I will do that.
Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Frazier. Any discussion? You're not in the committee. Hold on one second. You can go ahead, but I just wanted to clear that up, that you can't vote. Go ahead.
I don't, for some reason I don't have the motion in front of me. Is it for another 5 years?
To extend the contract, under the contract terms, they were for another 5 years, yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make the committee aware that it's my opinion that they did not properly provide us a written request for the extension of the contract. So if we wanted to do something less than the full 5 years, I think that we are completely within our rights to do that. First of all, an email to Paul Dusick is not written notice. And secondly, they have not fulfilled all of the contractual obligations. So that gives us an opportunity to not renew the contract blanketly. And I would be in favor of something less than 5 years.
The motion is to extend it for 5 years. Any other discussion?
I'd make it longer if I could.
after we vote, I'll let you speak. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
I'm gonna be opposed.
Okay, Kurt?
I wasn't gonna speak, but, I think I was referred to by Mr. Ellis here as one of the elite bicyclists. My name is Kurt Austin. Just like to call attention to the fact that, I think the ski train is an example of reality versus the many optimistic, forward-looking statements that Mr. Ellis has made over the past 5 years. That's a pretty big one. A smaller one is just the caboose. It's been slowly relocated to Thurman, but still not open. So even on a small thing like that, the promises are falling quite short. The hopeful statements have fallen well short of the reality. Now, the biggest one of all is that there's been no significant freight traffic on the line during the last 5 years. I don't see any reason to be more hopeful about the next 5 years. In general, passenger service to North Creek ended in 1954, I think. Why should it come back? Cars have only gotten better. Highways have only gotten better. Gas could be completely unavailable, and we'd just start driving electric cars. So there's really no reason to think there'll be a resurgence of genuine railroad activity on a corridor like the one in North Creek and beyond. Mr. Ellis also referred to what he thinks is a terrible decision up in Lake Placid. They're going to rip up the tracks between Lake Placid and Tupper Lake and put in a multi-use trail, a bike trail, for us elite bicyclists. Now that came about because nearly every business along that corridor favored the trail. And almost every in fact, I think every municipality either voted to rip up the tracks or have a study done to consider the trail option. It was not some flippant decision. It's not going to have any calamitous outcome either. I grew up in Rome, near Remsen. I've seen all the attempts to revive that line since the 1960s, during the first Olympics. It didn't work. It's not going to work. There's no reason it should work. Nothing has changed that put that railroad out of use. So that's what I have to say, and I do feel, as of now, I didn't know this resolution was coming up. I don't know if any of you did, but I'm quite surprised, and I feel a little, I happen to bring this book, I feel a little railroaded.
Mr. Austin, I would say, you know, you've got 5 years, you know, for us to look at, you know, anything that needs to be looked at. We've got 5 years, and we really owe this to the taxpayers to look at all the different options. And we have a contract, and it's, you know, I learned an awful lot through my discussions and getting up to speed with this, and we're not flipping the bill for the railroad. The railroad is paying their fair share under the contract, and I think it's a good thing. But we have 5 years to look at other options. Supervisor Molina?
I'm sorry it took me so long. I knew I had the answer here to the question. Up to, from the records I have here, from 11/4/2015, the railroad has paid out $206,145.22. And that was shared between Corinth and the county. I knew I had it in here someplace, but I was stuck.
Period of time?
From the start.
Since the beginning, 200 and some thousand.
This is what I have here, up till 11/4/15. So they've contributed to over 200,000 plus more at other places. Just to bring it up.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Lucia. Moving on with the agenda.
Next, would be the 1,000 Acres Crossings, Brian.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There is a
Thousand Acres Ranch is currently in bankruptcy proceedings, and we've heard from the attorneys for the bankruptcy estate and for potential buyers. And to be able to accomplish the sale that's been ordered by the bankruptcy judge, they need to have 3 crossings of the railroad property at the ranch. There are 3 crossings. There have been 3 crossings since at least 1916, when the railroad valuation maps were published. Those crossings, however, have not ever been reduced to rights in real property, to an easement. To be able to effectuate this sale pursuant to the bankruptcy court's orders, they need to be able to get title insurance. To do that, they need to have an interest in real property. And what we've come up with is a proposal that the ranch is comfortable with, and I am comfortable with anyway, is an exchange of easements. They would provide us 2 handicap spots right next to the train station at the ranch, and access to those spots. We would allow the crossings as easements that have always been there historically. It will get the ranch back on the operating basis, allow the sale. There's $200-some thousand in back real property taxes that will be paid immediately on sale. And I'm confident that legally it's justified and appropriate.
Movement, get on the floor. Supervisor Dickinson, second by.
Second, I just want to comment that I've had conversations with some agents for the new owners and whatnot. They are looking to get this up and running by this spring, so it's imperative we move this forward as quickly as we possibly can for them. So I happily second.
Any discussion? Supervisor Thomas?
Yeah, the Stony Creek's absolutely thrilled. A person has stepped forward that's going to continue the ranch resort and hopefully improve it and bring other activities and going down there.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay.
Next item, for information, Up Yonder's having a pancake breakfast and maple festival. This is an annual event. It's March 6th, 9 to 2. Reservations necessary, and just wanted to let everybody's invited, obviously. It's a nice event that we have each year, and good turnout.
Thank you. Reservations, it must be a busy,
Well,
you have
just
to
to know
go.
how much food to cook.
Oh, okay.
It'll sell out.
Supervisor Merlino?
I'd just like to tell Paul thanks for that hard work, and I think last year I donated a case of pancake mix to you. And I feel...
Case of beer.
No,
that was you.
You were supposed to mention that.
That went to you, the pancake mix went to Upriver. I mean, not Upriver, to the Maple Fest. I'll donate another case of pancake mix, and I'll have it up to you back this week.
Okay, thank you. That, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We move over to the DPW portion of the agenda. The first item is authorization to execute a correction deed. This is relevant to a parcel on State Route 9 in the vicinity of Lumberjack Pass. And it's really to clean up a prior acquisition by New York State DOT. I think Brian might want to speak to this.
There was a conveyance in 1940, and the description apparently was not appropriate. It included only a portion of the entire parcel that was intended to be conveyed. There has been a lot of work by Andy Kelly from over in Washington County on behalf of the owners, and there's been some survey work. I've looked at the forms. I'm comfortable with them. I just needed to get another look at the survey description and the map and make sure that they are consistent. But apart from that, I'm satisfied that it's not a new conveyance. It's just a correction of what was intended to be conveyed in 1940.
Moved by Supervisor Wood, second by Supervisor Sokol. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to abstain. D.L. Dickinson Associates, Land Surveyors and Engineers, Lake George, New York, did some survey work on this property, so I'm going to abstain. 668-468.
Okay.
No.
the more we're gonna handle.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Chairman, the next 5 items on the agenda are each for annual contracts, for various highway processes. The first on page 8, would be an award to Reifenberg for cold milling. The second is, to Peckham Road for another portion of the cold milling, bid. The third on page 11 is to Reclamation LLC, that's for cold in place recycling. On page 13 is an award to Highway Rehab, for hot in place, pavement recycling. And the final one is on page 15, for a new contract with Bell & Flynn, that's for cold in place recycling using the hammer mill method. These are each annual contracts that we bid each spring and utilize on our various projects.
Supervisor Wood?
I'd like to move all 5, please.
Second by Supervisor Dickinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
On page 17 is a request to authorize travel. This is for crew training. The training is located down in Selkirk, which is about an hour and 20 minutes south of here, with no traffic. And so I'm requesting overnight stays for the crew. The training itself is free and it's provided by the vendor that we rent equipment.
Let me get on the floor. Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Merlino. Mr. Chairman?
Are these for the paving crew members?
Yes.
How many of them are new and how many of them are, former people who've been trained through the Road Scholar program?
I think we've got 3 new members on the paving crew that we're sending to the training, and the other 4 have had various training. We haven't had training from this vendor in the past, though.
What makes this different from the training that we've approved year after year for the Road Scholar?
We use it as it's not only a training, but it's a refresher for some of them as well. And this is a unique opportunity because the vendor has offered to provide the training for free. We've awarded a bid for leasing of the equipment, and as part of that, they've said that they will provide the crew training altogether.
What now?
For leasing of equipment,
What kind of equipment?
leasing our paver for the season. So we're leasing a paver, and as part of that lease, we're receiving training on the specific paver that we're going to be receiving once the paving crew starts.
The same people who operated last year?
4 of the 7 that I'm sending have been on the crew. So it's the same.
They operated this equipment?
Yes. There's multiple people that operate the paver. It's not just one person. So.
Okay, is there any other discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
On page 19 is an authorization to backfill position. This is for a heavy equipment operator number 5. The position will be vacated at the end of March due to retirement.
Do you have a motion to get this on the floor? Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Merlino. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And the next page is, our next item is on page 20. This is authorization backfill position of motor equipment operator light number 17. And again, that's due to retirement, and that's effective end of March.
Supervisor Dickinson, second by Supervisor Sokol. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Okay, the last item for discussion is under our discussion and review portion. And I've got some documents in here, starting on page 21. I wanted to give the committee an update on our household hazardous waste collection days. We have been busy over this winter with some coordination with DEC and some bidding. We've got our two days scheduled. The first is on May 21st at the Warrensburg DPW shop, and the second one is on June 18th, and that's at the Queensbury Highway Department off of Haviland Road. I've also included the basic operating plan for portions of it that were recently approved by DEC. The next step for us is to submit for a grant from DEC. They have a program that will cover 50% of the costs of the the waste collection. Our current estimate for, based on the size of the community and some other, operations at various communities, our current estimate is a total cost of $30,000, of which, we're anticipating a 50% grant from DEC. We've got a couple, requests for information into DEC now about, how the final cost would impact the grant. It is a reimbursement, so our questions to them are if we have an outstanding turnout and our total cost of, waste disposal is higher than the $30,000, do we have to resubmit the grant? Is there a certain allowance for that 50% grant? We don't have an answer on that yet, but I'll be back to committee hopefully next month with an answer on that. We'll be submitting the grant application this week, and DEC is telling us that they can turn that around in a matter of about 2 weeks, so I should have an answer by the committee meeting at the end of March. What I'm anticipating in March is bringing a couple resolution requests. The first is to establish a capital project for the total estimate of $30,000. The second would be to fund that capital project. We'll need, the total expense of the $30,000. I'm anticipating being able to book on that 50% revenue, but then we'll need another funding source for the other $15,000. Right now, there's been nothing dedicated to this project. So that's what I just wanted to give the committee a heads up. That's where we're at. The other critical thing for the committee and the board to consider is the decision as to whether we want to charge user fees to the actual residents that are bringing their waste in. And some communities decide to do a user fee where you pay based on a schedule and the type of waste you're bringing, you would pay a fee, and that would cover the county's portion. The DEC would cover the other portion. Other communities simply do a collective, expense against the county or sometimes the towns involved, and that would be the other option, is to keep that as a municipal expense and not require individual residents to pay a fee. And there's pros and cons to each method. One of the cons of not charging a fee is you do run the risk of people bringing in waste from out of county and bringing it in, so it could inflate your overall expenses. If the users are paying a fee, then presumably they wouldn't be bringing in their relatives' waste from out of county without knowing that additional fee is going to apply to that as well. Obviously, the disadvantage of covering the costs as a municipality is that cost can go up significantly. The disadvantage, if we do charge a fee, would be that waste that right now is not making it into proper disposal would continue to not make it into proper disposal because the fees might dissuade people from actually participating. So that's a decision that doesn't have to be made right now, but we will need to make that next month at committee. From our perspective, it would be a whole lot simpler to fund this at the municipal level. We will be doing a pre-registration online. We're working with the IT department to do an online registration for residents and what they're going to be bringing, and that will allow us to verify residency either through property tax bill or utility bills. So we will be verifying residency for everyone participating. That's all I have.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, they can bring, we're gonna be doing flyers, and we're gonna be,
You're still gonna let people in, you're not gonna turn them away if they have an online register.
well, that'll be up for the committee to decide. If
Isn't the whole premise to do this is to get the hazardous waste out of the homes and properly disposed? Isn't that the premise for doing this? And having the grant pay most of the cost, or some of the cost?
The grant will pay $50,000 up to, that original estimate of 30, and we're waiting to know if it's anything different. Or 15,000. It'll pay 50,000, or 50% of the actual expense. Right now, we think the actual expense is 30,000.
But I mean, if you make this too cumbersome, then it's not gonna happen. People aren't going to bring in the waste,
I think it's if the committee wants us to allow anyone to bring waste, then then we should anticipate waste coming in from Washington County and Essex County and Hamilton County and Saratoga County.
You know, Warren County residents, but you can have them prove a driver's license if they didn't.
Sure, if we can verify their residency through a driver's license or, you know, they can bring a utility bill, they can bring a tax bill, anything. That would be our intent, but
I just think, not, that you shouldn't try to pre-register, but you don't wanna turn them away if they're residents of the county.
They all don't have computers. I think that's what I've been saying, a lot of my residents don't have computers, so they wouldn't be able to go online.
It's your fault.
Right.
from an operational standpoint, the pre-registration isn't just to verify their
Just helps
residency.
getting their number containers and stuff.
Right,
I've done this before.
right, and if everyone shows up when we open the gates, it will be a madhouse of, people rolling in, putting cans on the ground and rolling out.
Well, okay, that has to be managed by.
Right, so the pre-registration is an operational need as well, to be able to schedule when people bring their, waste.
Understood.
Evelyn?
I'm not opposed to pre-registration as long as it's not a requirement, and I just put forth for the committee's consideration, I know we're not making a decision today, but I know for my folks, if I've got an 80-year-old lady who's got to load all her paint cans in her car and drive to Warrensburg, and then if we expect her to pay when she gets there to get rid of it, she may say, those paint cans have been in that shed for 30 years and they can sit right there. You know, so I think that's something we need to think about. If the object is to get the stuff out of these houses, I think we need to make it as easy as possible, particularly for towns like Edna's or Jean's, where they're gonna have to drive to these states. They're already going out of their way. So we wanna make it less cumbersome, not more difficult.
The methods of registration aren't gonna be only the online, thing. We wanna make that convenient for probably the majority of the residents. That will be the most convenient. But we'll also be providing, flyers and posters for the towns, and we can provide hard copy of registration forms that can be either collected at the town or mailed in. We certainly want the, vast majority of people to pre-register so that we can make this, schedule this orderly and, if people don't pre-register, they might just have to wait in a line in order for us to be able to handle their waste.
Okay.
The last items on the agenda are, just my typical, reports on overtime. I also added my salt usage one and, fuel usage.
Must have done pretty well this winter, huh?
Our salt usage is down about 50% from the same month last year as far as January usage goes. We've had a number of nuisance storms, and as I look at the forecast going forward, we have a lot of nuisance storms coming through, which will have our crews out, and then we have a lot of warm-ups. The good news is it should pay dividends for us for the, you know, the normal spring flooding when snow melt hits. There's not gonna be much of a snow melt.
Mr. Chairman?
Do you have issues, Jeff, because I know my limited knowledge of salt, when you purchase ice, do you have to have places to store all your salt? Or are you having to pay to store it outside, or?
We do the state contract like the towns, so we're under the same controls.
I was just wondering if you had a big issue of not using all your purchasing and having to pay, storage charges, or you?
Yeah, we have had issues like that, where we've had to,
Just roll them up and spread it out on bare roads.
well, we don't do that,
If
but
I have an empty salt shed, I want you stored there for.
Nominal
For a
fee.
fee.
You get it back next year.
it hasn't been an issue we haven't been able to manage.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else? Mr. Thomas?
Yeah, I'd like to bring up an issue for the committee to consider. I know last fall, we had a gentleman come before the full board, talking about contract paving. I think that's something, Warren County should consider. I think, we need to refocus our DPW for building roads and, get somebody else to pave them. I just think that possibly would work out better, whether it would save us any money or not.
You done any cost analysis in respect to that, Jeff?
Yes, we have, and we think our costs our paving costs would go up. I think the analysis I did was about 23% on the comparison I did. So, it would increase costs. You know, frankly, if the board wanted to fund the additional cost, that wouldn't be a problem. My bigger concern would be scheduling of the work, and, with the amount of paving we do and all of the other advanced work that is done prior to actually the paving crew showing up, we are managing schedule on a day-to-day basis, and, it's one thing to have a contract paver who's just gonna come in and do an overlay on a road with no advanced prep work. That's easy to manage, but with the type of hybrid projects that we do, and the reconstruction sections, and everything else, scheduling a contractor and having them react to our changing schedule is, I think, the most difficult part.
I think we need to get back to reconstructing some of these roads, because we're paving roads that 2 years later are, turning into what they were before. I think we need to get back to tearing up the roads and digging it up, whether we go down with full depth or partial depth. We need to do more reconstruction, or else, to me, we're kind of wasting money.
As I've briefed the committee on, reconstruction is about 3 times the cost of overlay. So the problem that we're really having is with the lack of projects that have been completed in, for stretches of time where we were underfunded, we do have roads that are now, we're doing Band-Aid approaches, but I don't know of any, I think we have done a good job of assessing the roads and doing spot repairs. Certainly, some of the roads could have used more, but we're limited on the funding that we've been that's been put in place. To reconstruct a mile of road, we'll spend $300,000, and the overlays are about $100,000 with the ancillary work involved too. And so, I'd love to reconstruct more roads. I don't have the funding to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, we've discussed this before. I think it might be worthwhile to put a spec together and maybe have some private contractors offer some bids on driveway work. I think that whether you use it or not use it, at least you have it. And because I think some of these roads and some of these driveways become problematic, and what happens is you move on to the next job, but you've got a couple issues lingering on a previous job, and we're waiting to see when we can get back to those jobs. And I think that there's I think it would offer you a lot of flexibility and improve your response time, and maybe in some problem situations help if we had like we just approved, had some contractors that do driveway work for a living, just kind of available should you need them. I think this becomes an issue, especially as you get toward the end of the year when you're trying to get the work done, and you still have some of your work or some town works to do. So I would strongly recommend that you at least think about having a spec on some driveway work, especially when we're raising the elevations of roads and doing these kinds of things. I think that we don't always we have every intention of getting back, but sometimes toward the end of the year it has to wait till the following year to get back to do what we do. And I think if we had something like that, it would be very good thing. Like I say, use it. You might not use it, but should you need it, you've got it. So I would recommend that you at least think about that.
One thing I didn't have, I remember when we had that presentation by a outside paver. Does anybody have that? Is that part of the record? Yeah, is that part of the record, the folder there? Because I didn't have, okay. Dennis?
Move we adjourn.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
I got a 1 o'clock.